Welcome everyone. I'm gonna go ahead. I see we are on the clock now. So I'll open up this first little bit of information. As you're coming in, still keep letting us know who you are, where you're from, what you're doing in the field. I'm going to share this. Oh, everyone see that? Maybe not. There it goes. All righty. So hopefully today you're here because you're excited as we are to hear from Bill and Warren about the intersection of social work and sport. Just a few updates or little bits of information that we'd like to let you know. We have upcoming trainings and events of all kinds of exciting topics and also throughout the state. So you can see Region 6 is holding webinar and Region 11 are holding webinars that are for free CEs. Moving on, you can see our social work workforce SUD training series, and as well as our supervision institute, which are all also great opportunities to get your CEs with us. This information is also found on LMSW Michigan's website, where you'll find more information about the community organizing and racial justice event in May, and also things like our success principles for social workers, a self-care workshop in June. Also, here's our little shameless plug. You can never get too much networking or clicks, but here is a reminder to visit us on YouTube, visit us on our other social medias as well, to stay in touch and contact with just what's going on in ASW Michigan, what's going on at the national level, and also what's going on in your regions. If you have any questions today during the webinar, we'd like to kind of do a Q&A throughout if there's anything pressing, but hold most of them to the end, or answer most of those to the end, but I'll be collecting those and everything. So if you have any questions, just type in the chat box and we'll make sure to get to all of those. And if you need any CEs for this event, please complete the evaluation, which will be sent out towards the end of today's session. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be plugging that as we get towards wrapping up, and that is required to receive your CEs for this session. And if you would like to present at a webinar, or you have a topic or passion area that you feel like is worth presenting to people in this setting, please email Danielle Haskin. You can also find her information on our website as well. So finally, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. We're excited. I would like to now just introduce who we have speaking to you. First, we have Bill Vanderwill. Bill has been involved in the field of sports social work since 2012 at U of M. Bill has taught classes in sports social work and has over 40 years of combined experience in the field and teaching. The Bill Vanderwill Award was established by the Alliance of Social Work in Sports for outstanding leadership in sports social work, and Bill was the first recipient of this honor. Also, in February of 2019, Bill was recognized by the Detroit City Council for his outstanding leadership in the field of social work in sports. Also with us, we have Warren Clark. He graduated from the University of Michigan School of Social Work in 1980. Upon graduation, he worked in the field for 15 years before joining the School of Social Work Office of Field Education in 97. As the field faculty, he worked with students in the methods and practice areas of health, aging, community, and social systems. He has been a member of the university's Council on Disability Concerns since 1997 and had a SSW contact person for students with disabilities. Warren retired from his full-time position in 2015, and since then he has worked as a member of the application review team and taught introductory level social work seminar and worked in collaboration with colleagues in the practice area of sports social work. Contributions including developing and presenting sports social work content and teaching sports social work courses for continuing education credits. He's also on the advisory board and faculty for the U of M Sports Social Work Certificate. And with that, I think I'm going to just hand it off to Warren, who's going to share his screen with the PowerPoint for you all. And you can now hear the reason you came.
Hey, thank you very much, Grant. Hello, everyone. Welcome. That was really a very nice, generous introduction, and we really appreciate that. Thanks to everybody from NASW for giving this opportunity. It's an honor for me to be able to meet with everyone today and to work alongside my colleague, Bill Vanderwill. We've been working on this sports social work thing since 2012, and it's just thrilling to see that people are interested in learning more about this practice area, and as well as how you might adapt it to your own practice. So thank you all very much. We've already sort of introduced ourselves, so I'm going to turn it over to Bill to let him to see if he has anything else more to say as well. Bill?
Well, thank you for being here. We're really excited. I think sports social work can be relevant to everybody. There's many social justice issues, and I feel that sports social workers really add a lot to the field of sport for women and men and all people of all genders and all ages and abilities. So thank you very much.
So this is just, this course is just going to be we have an hour, and there's so much to cover in sports social work. We've gone from just building. And so today we're going to really have to scale it back. And we're going to define sports social work and talk about that a little bit, and then give sport examples at the micro, meso, and macro level, because it is adaptable at any parts of social work, both in method areas as well as practice areas. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of sports social work, which hopefully will keep people awake until you have to get back to work. And then we're going to have some Q&A and some discussion along the way. So we've, during the course of building this practice area, one of our colleagues came along this quote from Nelson Mandela. And I'm sure we're all familiar with him as one of the greatest social justice advocates of all time. He used sport as a way to help bring about the end of apartheid and unite South Africa. And it's a long and interesting story. If you care to look it up, I can't go into all the details. I would certainly love to. But he says that sport speaks the language of youth in a language they understand. It creates hope, and it can break down racial barriers. And so he used this and applied it in his own work. And we always begin our presentations with honoring Mr. Mandela and his unbelievable social justice work. And so this today is no exception. It inspired us to, as we created the program. And so we have a learning objective for today as well.
With the first learning objective is to raise awareness of how sport can be used as an intervention in social work to promote social justice through diversity and inclusion in micro, meso, and macro practice across the lifespan, and for all people of different abilities, all gender identities, and all ages.
Okay, so that's kind of where we're going to be now and at the end of the presentation today, as we've learned.
Also, sports social work promotes social justice and social change by focusing on the unique needs of athletes at both the individual and environmental level. And sports social workers promote the health and wellness of athletes through direct practice, community organization, advocacy, policy development, education, and research. So we all have a place at the table, no matter what perspective we have in our social work practice. in, when we look at sports social work, we go through the traditional model of the micro, meso, and macro. An example of micro would be individually focusing on the psychoeducational counseling and information referral of an athlete. And we really try to use the social work perspective of taking a biopsychosocial approach and allowing the person to be part of the process. So we really are focusing on empowerment and the social work competencies of engagement. Meso would be developing a group focusing on support, mentoring, tutoring with an institution. So we may start a support group for transgender athletes. We may have a special support area for students with disabilities, or maybe older adults who have signs and symptoms of dementia. And then macro, we look at community, advocacy for policy, funding, and social change. So examples of that would be the girls' hockey team in Southwest Detroit, where they couldn't afford to get the equipment, and social workers helped procure all that and ice time. Changing policy regarding transgender athletes, and also advocating for equal pay for women in the area of sport.
And so, when we're thinking about these at all the different sort of focus levels of social work, this is all happening on a larger and larger scale across the country, and including our area is especially Detroit and Ann Arbor and surrounding Southeast Michigan. And developing programs is especially where, well, I don't know especially where, but it's one of the areas where you can really use some of our values and concepts of social justice through diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of how you go about developing your programs, how you go about training your staff, how you go about structuring the interactions, and just how you deliver the services of whatever activity it is, from coaching a team to working at a rec center. We're going to talk about more specific examples as well, and be thinking of some. So when we have a discussion, as you learn about these concepts, you can think about more and more and more examples that you're aware of, because they're all around us, and people are doing it, but we might not always know about it.
One other thing I wanted to add is that we'll be talking more about it, but we have a national organization that now has become international, the Alliance of Social Work and Sport. And a big part of that is advocacy for athletes, especially social justice issues regarding pay, equity, supporting athletes of color. So we're always trying to influence policy.
Okay, and the other thing I guess we didn't mention right off the bat, we're going to ask if people have questions along the way to pop them in the chat, and we'll get to those as the hour progresses. And we're also going to have a chance for Q&A and discussion. We're going to save hopefully a bunch of time for that toward the end. And so now we are going to present everybody with our first poll question. Danielle or Grant, are you all able to manage the poll?
Wayne or Kaylin, do you have access to the polling?
Maybe we won't.
I think I think I do.
There we go.
So far, Warren, it looks like the majority of
Okay.
attendees believe that meso
Yeah.
is the correct answer at 79 or 80%.
Okay,
Micro
thanks,
is,
Grant.
yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I was just gonna say, I think we can end the poll at that percentage, so thank you. All right, Bill, do you have any other comments or info about the levels before we move on?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, so what we're going to do now is kind of move on. This is an area that I'm very excited about, but I know history always has a way maybe of putting people to sleep. But one of our grads, Dr. Jerry Reynolds, who's now the director of social work at Ball State University, he did some part of his PhD on the history of sports social work, and it was just incredible to learn that along with the settlement movement and Whole House that Jane Addams developed in Chicago to work with immigrants, she also was the person who she created, really was the first sports social worker. She used sports as a way to help immigrants have activities and have things to do, as well as having them hook up with resources. The immigrants were an oppressed population. We know this. They had no resources. They had no access to activities at all. And so she developed sports and through developing boys clubs, girls clubs, women's clubs, men's clubs. And she was culturally appropriate with a lot of the activities that she developed. She finding that folks who were Jewish liked to box. People from Greek liked to wrestle. I mean, this is sort of some of the things that she would include to help people feel a little bit more comfortable and not being cut off with the kinds of activities and sporting activities that they enjoyed in their home countries. And so her program was huge. She developed it as a certificate program, much the same as people around the country. We're very proud to follow in those footsteps now at the University of Michigan in terms of having our own certificate program for sports social workers. And she actually even had the first field training program because she taught classes and people had a chance to practice working with the populations. So without using the words DE&I, she was certainly working with a diverse population with everyone coming in from around the world. Equity in terms of having equal access with the greater population of Chicago to leagues and sporting activities that without her, the people would not have that. They're still looking on the inside, looking out at everybody else being able to enjoy all the privileges. And then, of course, inclusion. And so they weren't using that at that time. It's much what we do today as we reconnect with the history of sports social work and from learning about Jane Addams.
If I may,
Sure.
just one interesting fact, she started the first women's basketball team too. So the rights of women became very important in sports social work right from the start.
Yeah, and the women's basketball team was so good that the newspaper or sports columnists took note of them, and so they were actually able to compete in the Chicago leagues. And so they were breaking down barriers. And again, for us, it's an example of social justice. They were just doing this. I'm not sure that they used the terminology that we use today. And these are some of the photos of the participants in her programs. Without which, again, there wouldn't be these pictures. They wouldn't have these opportunities. Now, just quickly too, along the same time, this was in the late 1800s that Jane Addams was doing this work. Professional sports, especially baseball, began to become professionalized. And there were the social justice issues there were, again, there were sort of a parallel between what Jane Addams was doing in terms of the social justice issues in professional sports, along the lines of trying to break down racial barriers, especially in participation in baseball. Again, I've included this link. I'm just going to show it very quickly. It's a timeline that goes through some of the key individuals, as well as what their stories were, from initially trying to break down racial barriers to be able to have access. And Moses Walker, his story is really outstanding. He actually was the first professional player. He was actually banned from playing baseball, and it took 60 years before Jackie Robinson came along with Branch Rickey to be able to gain access to professional baseball. And so that timeline, we included that link when you get the slides, just so you'll be able to know, kind of what was happening in the professional side of sports, parallel to what was happening in the work of Jane Addams. It was all about social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion on both sides. And so that's kind of our link historically that's really solidified between Jane Addams' work and the professionalization of sports. And I really encourage you to take a look at that timeline. Bill, do you have other?
No, that's really a great comprehensive timeline.
Yeah, I really love that one. And so now we're going to move ahead to our next poll question. Yeah. People are kind of right on it.
Looks like the majority thinks all the above, Warren.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Grant. You can see in Jane Addams' day, they were using engagement. They had to do assessments and research and evaluation to know what culturally appropriate sports were for folks, and to be able to set up those kinds of opportunities. And so they didn't have CSWE. We have the advantage, and we use the competencies in social work education, and we have sports social work in those training opportunities for students where they can develop assignments that meet all of the competency requirements in their MSW training or BSW training. And so there's the educational link once we establish and we agree that sports is a viable intervention. Bill, do you have anything
No, I think
else
that's
on that?
well said. Again, Jane Addams and all these people that have come before us really have paved the way for a very important contribution to the whole field of athletics.
And so, and so in later days, if you consider that timeline, it's really evolved over the course of history. And so in addition to racial equity and inclusion, diversity in sports, it's also moved into the area of social justice around social issues. And from Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, protesting at the national anthem, to LeBron James has been very active since the George Floyd murder, working with the communities in Minnesota and at large. High school students have become more and more active perspective, the University of Michigan has the Wolverines Against Racism, is a very powerful group, and has worked with Colin Kaepernick to come and be a part of the University of Michigan activities. Simone Biles has been a proponent speaking out about her depression. So it's all still there. It goes back to Moses Walker, and it's kind of shifted, but it progresses where sports is being used as a platform to address social justice, just the way we talked about in our profession. And so here are more examples. And there's at our own University of Michigan, there were a couple of programs that, again, were social justice and DE&I focused. And one was the Youth Impact Program that Coach Harbaugh and Ricky Ellison brought to Michigan, former San Francisco 49 player. So they brought, do you want to talk about the programs, Bill?
Well, they were really innovative and exciting. They brought in teachers from the city of Detroit to teach. They had all kinds of resources, campus tours, and the program was led by MSWs. The Youth Impact was for the males, and the Edge was for the ladies, because we really believed that we had to have equity for both genders. And we also did a lot of educating about student rights, racial justice, inclusion, and it was a very powerful, the young people had a tremendous amount of fun. They actually improved in some of their STEM skills. And I think it was just a mind, body, and soul experience for all of them, and they really grew from that. And it really shows how sports social work can really raise up the field of athletics for people of all ages, genders, and identities.
Yeah, and some of the boys that went to the participated in Youth Impact have maintained contact with some of the staff and have gone on to go to college, and have testimony to the fact that that program really sort of helped them. So that as that was progressing for the boys, a couple of our grads and interns, actually as they graduated, they started to develop, they worked in the athletic department. They said, well, that's great for the boys, but what about the girls? And so they developed the Edge Youth Program, and it was for middle school girls. And again, it was multi-sport, volleyball, softball, basketball, STEM classes, along the same lines and the same model. It involved the community as well. And the thing that impressed me about that is that the last day of the camp, one of the girls are asking, going around the group, and one of the girls said, well, when I came here, I didn't have any friends, and I didn't know how to make a lot of friends. And so now I have friends, and I've learned how to make friends. And, your heart just melts, and you say, my goodness, how could this not be worth it in terms of what this whole package of sports and has been able to teach her. It always makes me think about Nelson Mandela and his words. They're always in the back of my mind when I hear these stories. So that's again another example at the macro, the meso level of being able to develop programs. They can be camps like this, or they can be within your schools, within your agency. We're starting to work with a program, the Metro Detroit Boys and Girls Clubs. We're going to have an intern there next year, and they're very sports activity oriented. So looking forward to working with them around these as well.
And
now, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, these programs are happening all over the United States. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Ohio State has a wonderful program called A Life Sport, where they've done also a tremendous amount of research with Dr. Dawn Anderson Butcher and her team. And so it's just really great to see this. They work with high-risk kids from urban areas around Columbus, Ohio, where the programs at University of Michigan, we really were trying to focus on Detroit youth, but we see things at Michigan State that are great, and it's just popping up all over. So it's really a movement, and it really started in the year 2012. So we've really come a long way in about the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill. And it makes me think of the Alliance of social work and sports too, because that's a way now to stay in touch with resources, employment opportunities, learning about other programs around the country, having the networking and to be able to just email and call someone to talk with them about their program. It's just been a tremendous, tremendous resource. And I mean, I guess I have to pat ourselves on the back, but these could be grads from any school, but the students who were initially studying in our program who wanted to focus on sports, many of those folks were the ones who were responsible for getting this alliance created. And so the folks who focus on this really have gone on to do some really great things. And it's still, kind of at the beginning.
But the scholarship is growing, and Dr. Tarkington Newman at the University of New Hampshire, other scholars all around the country are putting in more impact into the research community. And our students have gone on to do incredible jobs with the Detroit Tigers, the National Football League. It's really thrilling to see.
Yeah, so along with working in agencies, developing programs, offering counseling, working with sports teams. So yeah, that's a great point.
And especially for the school social workers, they can do a lot to really promote justice in the schools so that all kids feel that they belong, and that we try to address the issues of bullying or kids that have been humiliated in physical ed and don't want to do any sports, that everybody has a place at the table.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but as I learned about sports social work and how being a social worker can really benefit youth sports, I was coaching my son's baseball team through the years, and it occurred to me that it was very fortunate that I was a social worker because of all the challenges that many of the participants had. I was able to structure all the drills, all of our game day, all the activities. Was in coaching that team, they were very intentional and along the lines of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everybody got the chance to bat first. Everybody was a captain. The kids were empowered to figure out their own community project. And so you can really take this and apply it to everything you do. And as a way, that's really how it gets implemented and applied in your setting and in your practice. That's just what I did. There's a film that caught my eye on this from the CBS Evening News some time ago. It's only 3 minutes, and I think we're okay on time. So I wanted to go ahead and show this because I think, again, it exemplifies Nelson Mandela's words. And in 3 minutes, it kind of tells you about sports social work. So hopefully this works.
Well, it looks like we might not be getting any sound from the video. Warren,
Yeah.
it appears that we don't have any sound coming from the video.
Okay.
I don't know how it is where you are.
No, I can hear it. So I understand that there's not sound. I don't know what to do. God, shoot. Shows on the
Warren, on your screen, on your Zoom screen, under the More tab, there should be an option to share audio.
Oh,
Should be 3 dots.
share computer sound.
Yeah, that should
Someone
be.
made a suggestion in the chat too. I believe Ann mentioned a potential solution.
Okay. I have to have a password to get in, but I don't know what that would be.
Well, we can always email the video link out to the group afterward.
Okay, let's.
That
let's
would
do
be
that.
great.
Yeah, thank you. But basically the story is this young boy was, he met another young man with Down syndrome who was competing in the Ironman triathlete program. And so he, through his mom, he got connected, those two got connected, and he mentored him into being the youngest person with Down syndrome to ever complete a half Ironman. And then he also was able to join the man on his Special Olympics team in Florida. And so please do take a look at it. I'm sorry that I couldn't figure out the sound. But it's just one example. And Bill, can you think of any other examples where we want to make sure from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint that we're not leaving people out as social workers? That is sort of our charge in a lot of ways, and we use sports to do that. And there
Well,
are, yeah.
on the Athletes Connected website at University of Michigan, there's an excellent video about a swimmer, and they's name is G, and I think it's under G, and it talks about they's journey as an athlete, which I think is very, very good. Also, we're very interested because Warren's a gerontologist also, about how do we apply sport and activity and recreation to older adult people. And there's some great ideas, and he has a video he's going to mention in a few minutes. So we really want to be committed to the whole life cycle. We want inclusion because there's issues now around transgender athletes and access to sport. We're very excited about the women's soccer movement for equal pay. And so we are always disrupting and advocating and agitating for social change. So we're always out there looking at how do we make things more just.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. That's a great point. I've recently come across some additional examples where for this year, there are at least 6 young women who will be playing baseball at the collegiate level, and that's never happened before. There is a woman who is the first manager of a professional baseball affiliate team, the Tampa Tarpons. I think that's what they are. And so there are lots and lots and lots of examples and breakthroughs coming forward. And it goes back to 1950 when Althea was the first Black tennis player to be able to compete in the US Open. And so Title IX, we've been sort of pushed, this has been pushed. And I think for social work, it's like, well, how do we fit into that? And I think as with our new Supreme Court Justice, these ladies and young women who are doing this are serving as role models. And the social workers who are using sports and an intervention as a coach, as a team, you can talk to your kids, you can talk to your girls about, hey, did you guys see what so-and-so is doing? They can understand that they have opportunities, that they have equity, they can be included as never before. And so as a social worker, no, we're not going to work with those 6 women who are college athletes, but we sure as heck can use those as we work with our girls. They did this at the EDGE program when they had did the vision board activity, just to demonstrate and bring up examples of females who are in sports, high sports positions and management. And so it's something as a way that's kind of a way, one way anyway, that we can incorporate some of these things into our practice that are happening. And so the social justice aspect of this moves forward.
And one other thing is, for example, for people in recovery, substance-free baseball teams and all kinds of things. So everybody is included. So they don't go to the bar after the game. They go and have a picnic and all get together. So we're always looking at innovative ways to include everyone and to make sure that it's not just a meritocracy where you're praised for being a great athlete. It's being participatory in the sport. The Michigan Miracle League is wonderful about allowing kids with all levels of ability in wheelchairs, walkers, whatever kinds of things they use for mobility to be able to play the game. So it's really revolutionary and so exciting for me to see us breaking through the walls of people feeling like there's no place for me.
Yeah, one of the things, Bill, you mentioned earlier was the idea that we worked on through our program. You and I talked about this and worked on it together along with others, and that's the idea of having sports as an intervention across the lifespan. And I've, because of my background as a social worker with gerontology, it was especially interesting to me to find out about the St. Louis Cardinals Reminiscence League as a way that really, again, I could go into detail about that, but I won't, but it was developed to work with folks who have mild to moderate dementia in some kind of a day treatment or assisted living or a nursing home kind of a setting. And so it's a way we get disconnected as we grow older. And so people who no longer are independent and are experiencing a lot of losses, you all know this, right? They get disconnected sometimes from who they were in their lives. And that would include being a sports person, a competitor, a fan, what have you. And so there are ways that social workers can be very active in using. There's a toolkit from the Alzheimer's Association about how to go about setting up a reminiscence league. So there's that, there's other kinds you can think of activities. I always encourage people now, and as students are training to, when you do an assessment with an older adult, find out what their sports history has been. What is their relationship to sports? Include that in your assessment, and it gives you the opportunity to help connect them back or to move forward with who they were as sports people, so they don't have to be cut off from their lives. They can be still included. And so this video is one of the sessions at the session of the Alzheimer's Reminiscence League. They worked with the St. Louis Cardinals and Cooperstown and a whole bunch of other people to bring this about. Bill, do you have anything else on that about older adults or lifespan stuff?
Well, also, it's very exciting that we have more and more sports offerings for deaf people and blind people, even a baseball team for blind people to be able to play ball. And so it's really exciting to have a person who is blind. They have special balls and sensors and things so people can play. Also, we're seeing a great empowerment in the area of people who are deaf, and with Academy Awards, and really we're wanting to think about these are wonderful people, and how can we help them fully enjoy sports activities. So we're really in deliberation for everybody, and that everyone can enjoy and be on whatever they want to be. And so that's why I think social work is so relevant, whether you're doing it at your synagogue, church, temple, mosque, community, baseball field. We can bring this vision and hope to everybody. And that's the power of social work.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I noticed when we were coming in, people were putting down where they were from. I noticed that there were a few hospice social workers. And so it makes me think of, again, with end of life issues. And if you have the time in hospice, the families are often around or maybe not. But if that person is able at a point that they're able to communicate and talk about their lives, if they're doing a reflection, or you can include that. What did they do in terms of sports? Did they ever play anything? They may enjoy reminiscing about what their life was in relationship to sports. Maybe they have a great memories of going to the Tigers games, or maybe they have great memories of playing on the playground with other kids and the games they played in their neighborhoods. Or, these kinds of things can be incorporated into a person's life in that way too.
Another interesting application is we had a teacher in one of our classes, and she said, I'm going to run my class like a team now, and using these concepts to really bring people together and have a strong sense of esprit de corps.
All right, well, we have about 15 minutes left. And again, we could continue and move into other topic areas or start drilling down into more detail. But Bill, do you think it would be all right if we turned it over and had some moved on to discussion? And,
Oh, of course.
And have questions. So
Sure.
I put this up. Before we do that, there's two links on here. One is to the online sports certificate, so you can get all the information that if you're interested in signing up for the certificate program, it's there. It gives you everything you want to know, how many classes. I should know how many classes it is off the top of my head, but I can't remember. But I think it's worth about 14 credits. And then the other one is, if you're not interested in, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a link to our continuing education where there's the 2-hour asynchronous presentation on sports social work, and it's an 1 credit of what the heck is it? 1 credit of ethics. There it is. And so that's just if you want a little bit more detail than we're doing today. You can sign up and take that course. I know, again, it's getting a lot of traffic since the April 30th deadline is coming up for license renewal. And so, yeah, go ahead.
And what we would like to see is every school of social work to at least have a sports social work mini course, because we really feel this material is important to get out there. So any of you that are educators, either professors or adjuncts, think about incorporating it, because we're also working with a group in Canada, and they're really promoting these ideas, and they have a podcast program with Brandon DeLacroix, looking at all the different issues of sports social work. So we're really trying to get the word out there, and we'd like you to all help us do that.
That's a great point, Bill. And again, if you're thinking about incorporating, we're going to talk about how can you think of how you might use this as an intervention in your practice. The Alliance, there are people in all different kinds of sports, using sports social work in all kinds of different jobs. And so if you're a member of the Alliance, you can use that as networking to find out tips and how do people go about creating their programs. You'll also have contact information for Bill and I, and we'd be happy to connect with you as well. And so we want to encourage folks now to have some discussion and question and answers about at least 2 of the things that we put up here, but are certainly open to whatever is on people's minds. So does anyone want to address how, as you think about this material, how you might use it in your own practice?
This is Christina Wilson. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Bill and Warren. I believe it was you, Warren. You made a really, really good point. I work for Blue Cross Blue Shield in senior health services, which means that my intervention with the sports would very likely be something akin to asking them what they enjoyed doing as they were younger, what were their hobbies. And I
Yeah.
have naturally found myself incorporating that into my assessment with a very strong belief and all the evidence-based things that are coming out around mental and physical health being so connected, particularly when people are entering later years of life, having difficulty doing the things they once enjoyed. But as you said, to your point, they find a lot of joy often in talking about those years of their lives when they were able to be more physically active. So I've seen that to be a very good asset to building rapport with the people that I'm working with.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. It really started to concern me that in realizing how cut off people get from their lives when they have to go to assisted living or some residential program, they can't be independent anymore. And I thought, why do we have to lose the connection with who we were as we came through our lives? And sports really seem to be a good way to use to connect again. Let's see, are there?
There was a question in the chat. Someone was wondering, how would you use sports social work to help clients dealing with loss or grief?
Bill, do you want to
Yes,
take a
well,
crack at that one first?
yes, Sandcastles, which is a children's grief program through Henry Ford Hospital System. They use sport and recreation as a chance for kids to come together and share and have fun and be able to talk. I know I did an after-school program where we would do just some general new games. There wasn't like keeping score or anything, but then we would sit down after and we'd have different themes each week. And we talk about, loss and letting kids talk about that. I think many times by kids playing with each other and sharing with each other, they're much more open to talk about these issues rather than if you just sit them right down in a group and say, well, we have to talk about your mom dying, that might just be really, really painful for them. So we always see that sport is a vehicle to get people to the point where they can share more. So I think Sandcastles is a wonderful example of that. And I used to be a camp counselor, and we would use a lot of sport and then have a session where we'd sort of sit down on the beach or whatever and talk about different things. And that's a great way to touch upon those very painful issues of how do we grow from loss.
So I think that's a great way of, the experiential part of that, especially with groups. I think if you're working with an individual, and if it's someone who has lost a loved one who's passed, and you're doing loss and grief counseling, you might ask them, doing an assessment of the life of that person that left, and if they have had any interest, maybe they played high school. Let's say it was someone's grandparent, and I don't know what the situation is, but in any situation, learn about their life, and if they had played sports, it may give that person an opportunity to grieve through reminiscing and talking about how whatever it was that was important to that person. So it may be able to be a vehicle to really be able to help them process and deal with that grief. We talk a lot about individuals who have loss and grief issues from having to end their career in sports
Yes.
and transition back to civilian life, or have sudden loss from injuries. And so there are a lot of loss and grief issues around that as well. So and the older adults have lost a whole lot by the time, many times, if you have to give up your independence and go to assisted living or a nursing home. So loss and grief occurs in a whole variety of ways, and you can use sports in each one of those to really address and to help, to hopefully help mitigate and help individuals process
Yes, well, that's excellent points, Warren. Thank you. And as Warren said earlier, we could spend 10 hours talking about all the issues in sport and social work. It's really exciting. There was also a question in the chat on how to use sports social work in private practice. And Warren and I knew a woman in Ann Arbor, and she was including a walking group in her private practice where they could walk. And we know that being out in nature, Warren and I were just discussing an article this week about being out in an area where there's a lot of blue, or even looking at photos that have blue in them, actually trigger the dopamine in the brain. Another way for private practice is that some social workers include sports social work by counseling athletes of all different ages and abilities and identities. So a very well-known private practitioner in Chicago, Natalie Graves, she solely does sports adjustment issues for children, youth, and even professional players. Also, when you're doing your assessments, to talk about with your client, what is their sport history? Because it could be good or bad. Some people might have been bullied when they were kids in school and physical ed, or they might have had a really rich time in sport. So maybe in working with depression is to develop a program where they can get re-involved in a sport that they like, or walking programs, or different kind of some of the clinical social workers even include some yoga in their practice and other kinds of body interventions. So there's so many creative ways to do things now. And I'm always just baffled when I talk to people and very humbled about what they're doing. So much creativity.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. There's a great question from Shelley. As a social worker and school board member, I wonder how we might get this into to other board members, athletic directors, teachers, coaches, etc. I see too many middle and high school teams focused on winning and even if cheating. Yeah, I think that's a great point and question, Shelley. And there are folks around to present in schools. The school social workers can really ask to develop trainings around positive strength-based coaching around some of these foundations, like we're talking about social justice, DE&I, and the education to those groups. It sometimes can be through physical education teachers. And so how do you get this through? Yeah, you can get it through if they're interested in having someone come and present such as this. I mean, we're always able to do that. I know there's a company of colleagues that I've worked with and trained called Dare to Be. We can put their info in the chat, and they do this kind of work and come in and they work with the Detroit Athletic Club. They work with colleges and schools doing exactly this kind of thing, or at least part of what they do. So yeah, that's a great point. This educational piece is really, really important.
And one thing I'd like to add is that some school social workers also coach a sport, which is great, because then you really infiltrate the whole culture within the team and it can radiate out. And as Warren is an expert in all this, he said that you really have to create a culture within the school of reframing sport, rather than it's all about winning, you gotta win or you're a loser, but it's what are the takeaways from being on a team, the sense of belonging, learning how to cope, social skills, diversity skills. There's so much that can come out of that. And a school is a rich environment of that. We know a number of people that are school social workers that coach a sport, and it's a very powerful intervention.
Thanks, Bill. There's a lot of research that would suggest that you can actually win more games when you use a strength-based approach as opposed to the conventional style. But let's see.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of great things in the comments, people using hiking, walking, or some sort of activity prior to starting sessions. or maybe
Mhm.
figure out people using yoga throughout sessions. We had a question earlier, and maybe y'all can shed some light because I know it is a pressing topic lately. How does the intersection between social work and sport, or how can that be used to further advocate for transgender athletes as we look to remove restrictions and bans on these athletes?
Well, I think on the macro level, we have to really advocate for policy change. And as NESW Michigan does, they watch all the legislation and everything. And we work closely with political social workers. We love all the people that are running for office now, and to really monitor policy, but also on the school-wide level or the district level to be educating administrators, to advocate. There was one governor, I think it was, I don't know if it was in Illinois or Missouri, and he recently vetoed a bill that would said that was limiting trans athletes. So that's a hot topic in social work right now. And I know one of our national board members, Dr. Jerry Reynolds at Ball State, he's been really working on that issue about how do we as social workers advocate, educate, and do whatever we can for that community. And a lot of it is education, because people just don't understand what a valuable part of the community these people are. You know, they're wonderful, and it's all this prejudice and bias, and we really have to challenge that in the classroom and the church and everywhere we go.
So that's a great point. When I think about it, and from an education standpoint, it's a multi-pronged approach. Bill mentioned policy. Also, when you're working with young people in sports, teaching them about diversity and acceptance and the importance of human relationships and the dignity and worth of the person. These are all teaching these kind of fundamentals and foundations to kids to be open and accepting is going to help them when they reach adulthood, so that maybe they will carry that into adulthood and look more favorably on people of all people. And so that's another way to use sport to teach kids about just being more accepting of others and their differences.
Well, we also had a question or a comment on how can we use sports social work or terminology or sports and activities for those people that have those negative kind of perspective on sports in general.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a really good statement and a really good question, because those can be have been really traumatic experience that people may have had really negative experiences with sports, and give people a chance to talk about those. We have folks in our class who will talk about, it's not all just glory. There's some really negative sides of sports, and there's some negative experiences, and to give people a chance to talk about that, and then maybe they can reframe, maybe they can take their experience and turn that into their coaching opportunity, or sort of deal with it in some way. If you're a professional and a clinical person, like you can still use sports as an intervention, even if it wasn't a totally positive experience for you. You can make sure that is for someone else.
And then just to normalize it. So when you start say, well,
Right.
Could everybody say their pronoun? So it just becomes, this is our community. We're all here, we all belong. And we really need to integrate and mainstream all of us. And it's really exciting. We're making change, and social workers are about change. And we hear from people all around the world, because our group is international now, of things that they're doing. And it's really a whole movement of changing sport to make things better for people, the homeless soccer teams and all these running programs that they're doing in inner city communities. And day by day, we're making change. And so that's great. And thank you
Yeah.
for I know that people are needing to sign off because we're overtime, but thank you everybody for participating. Thank you for your questions. Let's continue the discussion.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes. Yes. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you all have found this as insightful and as just interesting as we have. We've had an enjoyable time planning this.